Hey YouTube, it's your typical dad here, and I plan on removing my AC compressor from a 2007 Expedition, which I don't find a lot of people on YouTube discussing how to do it, what to do. So I'm gonna make this video to show you guys that stuff. The first thing you're gonna need to get yourself a kit is a set of AC gauges. You can get them off Amazon cheap, and usually they come with a pump. It's cheaper to get that set than to have a professional remove your refrigerant and put it back in. So you might as well have it for the rest of your life and for your other vehicles. Another thing you'll need to do is buy your the right AC compressor also for your vehicle. So I bought mine off Amazon as well, fairly cheap. If I jack up the vehicle off the ground, you don't have to do that to get to it, but I'm old and it makes it easier. The next thing we're gonna have to do is actually evacuate the AC refrigerant. It's kind of something that people keep hush-hush, but you can let it out because you have to. You're like me, you have to remove it before you can take apart your compressor, which is sitting down there, and I'll talk about it in a minute. So what do? What's the first step? The first step is to take these little caps off and then grab your low and your high side. What I do is actually remove this part. This I'm gonna remove and put in something I homemade so I can discharge the AC. I'm making the video, but here's my homemade thing. I got some polyurethane line, and I just kind of makeshifted using different connectors to make something that will screw into that, because I'm going to be turning on and off that valve in the car or truck with this, so I can totally evacuate out the refrigerant. Sure you don't twist that in too tight because it really wasn't made for this. You want to keep this as good as possible over time. So the next thing I do is find the low, which is usually the smallest, and I just put that on there. You can hear it leaking a little bit already. So you want to open the valve up all the way and just let it start airing out. You can air it out into the atmosphere. It happens every day, so don't get bogged down with having to worry about that stuff. You can even use a fan if you want to blow it out into your yard. Get it out of your garage so you don't breathe it. So once you've done the evacuation in both the low and the high, I would use the same exact thing for the high one and then just repeat. When you're all done, it's totally evacuated, you're ready to remove your part. And so I jack up the truck, and really, you know, there's a couple things down here that you need to remove. Also, you want to remove this plastic thing that's in front of the fan. And then another thing, this AC's way underneath on these third generations, which does not make it easy. And so the first thing I do is take off the clutch, which is what actually broke in the first place. Symptom is you look in there, you look underneath your car and you see this black stuff that's melted, and really that's just rubber that melts and breaks off, melts as it gets hot and broken. That's the reason they have this rubber seal, is actually to become a wear part and break before your pump does. So that's why it's designed that way. You can replace just this, just so you guys know on YouTube. You can replace those if that's what the problem is, but in my case, the pump is bad too, because I put on another one for fun and it ripped that one off. This one here is also broken. So the next thing I do really after doing that is we need to get the belt pressure off. And so I use a breaker bar. I just stick it into the tensioner, and then up top I'm going to actually do a trick for you guys. You can attach not a winch, but one of those come along straps you can buy at the store. I know if there's any real mechanics out there, they'd shoot me, but I don't care. I'm on a budget. I'm a dad of 3 kids, 3 beautiful kids. So I wrap that around the breaker bar, and I just attach it here to this hood dampener thing, and then I just crank away until it relieves the pressure, and it can stay that way because you'll also want to put the belt back on when you're done removing the pump. So there's a trick for you guys. So after that, it's hot out here in Oregon. It's Oregon summer. It gets pretty hot, maybe 1 week out of the whole year. Just kidding. Nobody wants to be my helper. My kids, they don't want to help. So it's just me. You can do this. If it's just you out there, you can do this whole thing by yourself, because I'm gonna show you and help you. I forgot to mention also, before you remove the belt, obviously there's a bunch of plastics in here. I'm hoping you guys already know how to take that stuff off. It's super easy. The plastics over the motor for the air intake. The next thing is about getting down. We're gonna have to take some bolts out of the AC compressor, and it's not super easy to get to on this 3rd generation. So I don't think you can see it from the camera, but down there is where it connects to the AC compressor. It might be easier to get it from up here with a swivel socket and get those loose. Those are where the AC lines up here connect to it. So that has to come off. And then lastly, underneath the vehicle again, there's 3 of these puppies that need to come out. Not the big one, but the little one near the compressor itself. There's one there. There's 2 on the bottom, I think. Yeah, 2. And then a 3rd one kind of up there, a little bit higher. So really you only have 3, plus the 2 lines that come into it. I don't know where your bubble gun is. How about you help me replace this pump?
Why?
Come on, you know you want to help your old man.
Why are you even recording me?
Because you're a star on YouTube.
I'm not going on YouTube!
How about you help me? You help me?
Yeah.
The trick is, this is a number, I'm using a number 10 metric. It's a Ford, so standard, I don't know, whatever probably fits. But notice how there's a lot of rust coming off. Don't get that in your eye. So you could wear protection, or also have a good light. That's gonna help. And then you'll see how it just kind of slides right out. It's just a really long rusty bolt. There's 3 of them all together, like I mentioned, and there's another one there I gotta get out. Then the top one, which is there, leave that in there until we do the hose ones. So I'm gonna do this other bottom one real fast. Also, get comfortable by making jacks your pillow. Helps as you're laying under here trying to twist off some stubborn bolt. And when you get it, you feel so good, but your neck's not feeling that great. So make the jack your pillow. I mentioned there's a couple of wired connections for the AC compressor, so get rid of those or unhook them together before the pump falls, because it's really heavy and can rip that out. You don't want to rip those out. So those refrigerant bolts aren't super easy to get to. I used kind of one of those folding wrenches, box ends, to get to that from underneath. I think you might get to them from the top, but I'm just trying something different down here since I was struggling. Maybe get some gloves. It's kind of dirty. Another thing, guys, gals, I went ahead and removed a retaining ring because I want to pull this whole pulley off. It's getting in the way of some things that I'd like to remove, like those bolts. Just grab yourself one of these retaining ring pliers that help you get it off. So the bolt on the refrigerant connection to the AC compressor is a 12. And it's really hard to get to. I wasn't able to remove the pulley. I think there's another retaining ring in there. But I was able to get one. It's gonna fight you a little bit. Sometimes gloves actually make it so you can't really feel that good. So you might just have to get your hands dirty. I'm gonna go take the other one off next. It's right next to it. So the Second bolt's troublesome, and I used this long extension with a 12 socket that was deep down there and got it on. Now I'm just going to crank it off. I used a deep one because these compressors have bolts that come out of the casting, and it's a nut on it, so it needs to be a deep socket. Also, it's decent, or have just a decent ratchet wrench that actually bends at the head. That helps. I got this one at Craftsman. Cheap and lasts forever. Or I'm a big fan of Harbor Freight. I'm a cheap dad who has to pay a lot of bills, so Harbor Freight works really good for me. Another thing is, people might say, well, remove the wheel, you know, and lift up that floppy little plastic thing to get to it. But you can't on these third generation Expeditions. They sit lower. The motor sits lower into the frame, and they happen to, some brilliant engineer decided to put the AC compressor really low, and so it's really hard to get to, and you can't do it by taking a wheel off, just FYI. Both bolts are off, so the next thing is to remove that last third long bolt. And then that AC compressor is fairly heavy. People don't realize it. It's like 20 pounds or something, so watch out when it comes out. Okay, here's my head on the cement, making it a pillow. All the bolts are out. I left the pump up there because it's heavy. Get yourself a good LED light. Mine's an old tube one. I've had it, since 1995 or something. If you all want to get me a new one. One other point that you should remember as a home mechanic is when you take that compressor out, there might be some oil that's still sitting in that compressor. Believe it or not, they take like PAG 46 or PAG 100 oil. It's not the refrigerant, it's actual oil for the compressor, so it doesn't break down over time. That could leak into your eyeball when you try to get it out. Just be prepared for any leaking things when you pull it out. Okay, the pump struggled to come out, the compressor, so I took the fan off since that was in the way. Should come out real easy now. Get yourself a screw gun, put a socket on the end. Works really good for lots of things. Here we are again, more specifically about that oil. It's gonna spill in your eyeball. Be careful. Have rags. So basically, I reversed the process. I got the new pump in by putting back in the bolts for the refrigerant lines and the mounting studs to the frame of the compressor. I did find that the new one I bought had bolts instead of nuts on studs like the previous compressor, so it was a little different and tricky. You'll have to figure it out. There's some tight spaces down there. Now it's time to recharge. I got my gauges hooked up. The first thing I'm gonna do is open these valves, and I'm gonna turn on my pump. These are closed. So the first thing I'll do is turn it on. Nothing's happening. And the next thing I'm gonna do is open these up. You can hear the pump start to work. I'm gonna let this run for a few minutes and try to get some negative vacuum pressure. And this will be important later to see if we have any leaks after the job. So I'm gonna let this run for a minute or two. So I'm back after a minute or two. I still see close to negative 30, but this gauge may not go all the way down. The next thing I'm gonna do is close these off. You wanna close them completely. And then you're gonna wanna turn off your pump. And what you're gonna wanna do is let this sit for a good 20 minutes, maybe an hour, and come back and see if that gauge has moved back towards zero. If it's moved back towards zero, that means I didn't do my connections very good and there's a leak somewhere. So this is a very, very important thing, or you've wasted your whole day replacing the compressor. I'm gonna come back in an hour. Before we move on, I wanted to say a couple more things. That this 3rd generation Expedition has much tighter clearances for the AC. I've owned a couple of the older ones, piece of cake. So the problem is it's gonna be tight clearance, which will hurt your hands in some positions. Just take a good long break when you feel like you're getting really mad, you can't get a bolt in or out. Use different angles, try to get it out. Another thing is you may want to take the compressor down a little ways on its studs so that there's some play in there, which makes it easier to get to other bolts, like especially for the refrigerant lines. And make sure you have the time to do it. That's the other thing. This is my wife's vehicle, so I made sure she doesn't have to take the kids anywhere, and if it's really hot, do the work in the morning. The next thing I want to do after replacing the compressor is replace the dryer and the receiver dryer. There's a couple names for it. It's the place that dries out the AC inside the condensation. In the old generation, I remember it used to be here back behind this wiring harness. It was like a metal canister, easy to get to, but in this 3rd generation, they annoyingly made it very difficult to get to, and it's not even the same canister. It's not even a can. Now it's inside the AC radiator. I forget the word for it. So let's look at that. So the dryer now is actually, if you come up under front here and you look up at your AC condenser, actually even more up front, sorry. Right where my light's shining, that's the bottom thing you need to take off. And in there, you'll pull out this long stick looking thing with some like silica gel balls that help dry it out. It's really bizarre, but that's what you got to replace. And there, of course, it's pressurized, so you want to do it at the same time you do the compressor. Help me with the AC compressor.
Later.
Promise?
No.
Someday I want to train him to know all about cars, pass it from father to son. But right now, he's more into skateboarding. I'm continuing to watch my vacuum. I went to the store and came back and thought I saw maybe down a little tiny bit. So I'd mentioned earlier this compressor is annoyingly has different studs. It has bolts actually that go into the compressor. You can see the end of one right there. The other one was a stud with a nut. The stud was on the compressor, which made it, I think, easier, but in this case I'm going to reach down there with a long, I have a long with a swivel at the end, and I'm going to use this, which fits in that. It's like an Alex bolt. Okay, I let the vacuum sit overnight, and I saw that the gauges slightly moved, just slightly, from 30 down to like 28. So what I'm gonna do, there is a small leak somewhere. I didn't change my O-rings. You know, you may want to do that if you do this. The O-rings on the refrigerant that go into the compressor. Change those if you want. I actually have used this before, and I can vouch for it that it actually does work. So because that leak was so kind of minute, I know it's at the O-ring level, and this does work very well on O-rings. So if you don't want to go redo everything, because it's a lot of work, don't redo it, do this. So after determining I am going to include this with my recharge, the next thing I do is I'm just going to run the vacuum now for over an hour, because it's just going to keep on pulling any moisture. You want a what?
Cream soda.
Cream soda? Okay. And make sure, you know, that you get some refrigerant. I use this. It's another sort of Amazon 3-pack you can buy. Expeditions, you want to look carefully at the numbers. which are here, it should show the amount. It's a rear, this is an Eddie Bauer, so it sucks more amounts. I got a 6-pack of this on Amazon. It won't use it all for this. Third generations actually use less than the other generations. So just look at that sticker and it'll tell you how much in the front and rear. Put it on a total. Get just the right amount. The last can is where we'll weigh it and see to make sure we don't put too much in. And then I want to account for the 3 ounces I'm going to put in the middle of all that with this. Is 3 ounces. Okay, something else would be also after you replace a major component, you're going to want to put in some refrigeration oil. Ford takes, this Expedition 3rd generation takes 7 ounces of it. And they like to tell you Motorcraft, which is fine, but most pumps, I get 100 PAG oil because most pumps
Hello, Daddy.
come with something you don't really know which one it is, and this one's in between everything. Should work for every application. Another reminder is when you get a new compressor pump in the mail, dump out whatever was in there. Just dump it out. So you don't want it. You want to fill it up using this. And you may ask, why didn't you fill it up when you installed the pump? And that's because I don't want it spilling back out as I'm getting mad and trying to position it. So what I do is I get a bottle that has ounces on it and I fill it up to 7 ounces. They come in 8-ounce bottles from the store. And believe it or not, when this is done, when I'm happy getting all the moisture and air out, I'm gonna take this off and actually drain this liquid into that line as the first step when we start recharging. Refrigeration ready. Go ahead and screw your cap on. Get that all screwed on. So once it's on, the next thing we do is actually attach, I take it off the pump and I put it on this can, and then I'm going to pierce the can by screwing it all the way down. When it's screwed all the way down, it's still off because all you've done is pierce the can. Then as I turn it back on, the gas comes out. But first, after that, I want to unhook the yellow line here and pour in some oil, maybe half of it, 4 ounces to start. And then I'm going to start releasing and purging the air. I was going to put the refrigerant oil in the line and then start sucking in it, but it's taking so long to pour into it. Another cheat would be to go ahead and open this up, because it's up here on top, and then just squirt your 7 ounces down in there. And it's going to land down inside the compressor, and then we'll just re-vacuum it before we add the refrigerant. So that's my sort of solution. I don't want to wait any longer. The kid's got to go somewhere, so you don't have to do this. It's up to you. You say, Joel, how am I going to do that? So you're going to use like a turkey baster. You're going to suck up that PAG 100 oil, all 7 ounces of it, and you're just going to shoot it down in there. So that's how we're going to do it. The gravity will do the rest. After I did turkey baster to get the oil down into the compressor, that'll run through here. I have to retake a vacuum because obviously I'll open the seal again. In a minute here, I'll hook this line back up to my refrigerant. And we're going to shoot it back into the tool and turn on the truck. Okay, so I turn this all the way down so it pierces the can after it's all hooked up. And then as I unscrew, it's going to allow the refrigerant into the system. But after I do that, I'm going to go ahead and unscrew it. Just going to allow the gas into the line. So the next thing you want to do is purge this line. In here you can just hit it with a screwdriver till the refrigerant comes out. And just look out for that when you do that. Just quickly, I've turned the engine on. It's a sight glass you can see your gas going into. To get that AC compressor to kick on, sometimes I move this bottle over. And as the bottle runs got everything done. It takes about a half day to do everything, so plan on that. But everything's cold and running good. The whole method I used in this video worked very well. We had a few bumps and bruises along the way, but everything's done. Hope this helps you.